All right, let's just jump right in. For thousands of years, we've thought of the Bible in a certain way, right? It's a history book, a book of laws, a bunch of stories from long ago. But what if that's only half the picture? What if it's actually something else? What if it's a coded map, a map specifically for you? And really, that's the big question we're tackling today. Is this ancient book about events that happened to a specific group of people thousands of years ago? Or is it something much more immediate? A kind of timeless, universal guide to the landscape of your own mind? Well, the sources we're looking at suggest there are two ways to read it. There's the exoteric, that's the outer layer, the literal story, the history, the moral laws for society. But then, hiding in plain sight is the esoteric, the inner meaning. And this is where it gets really interesting because it's a symbolic roadmap for your soul's journey. Now, to get to that inner meaning, we need a key. You can think of it as a cipher that lets us unlock the code and shift our whole perspective from the literal to the deeply personal and symbolic. So first, let's get super clear on the exoteric. Think of it like the container, okay? It's the beautiful, epic story that grabs your attention. It's the historical stuff and the moral rules that start to bring some order to our chaotic lives. It's absolutely the necessary first step on the path. And then we have the esoteric. This is the treasure inside that container. It's a psychoenergetic map. So all those characters and places, they're not just figures from history anymore. They become powerful archetypes for parts of our own inner world, for states of consciousness that you and I can experience right now. Okay, you ready? Let's use this key on one of the biggest stories of all, the fall of man. Esoterically, this isn't about something that happened way back when. Nope. It's a diagnosis of our current psychological state. It's about us. And this is where things just pop open. The Garden of Eden? It's not some place on a map. It's a state of mind, a state of pure unified consciousness, our core. And Adam and Eve? They're not just two people. They're archetypes. Think of them as consciousness and energy living in perfect harmony. Then along comes the serpent. The serpent is that little voice inside, the beginning of the ego. That part of us that says, I am separate. And eating the fruit, well, that's the big moment, isn't it? It's the soul choosing to say, yep, I'm this separate ego. And suddenly, the world splits into good and bad, me and not me. And the result of that choice is exile. We get exiled from that unified core of our being into the choppy, fragmented, dualistic periphery of the ego's mind. And that's where we experience life as a constant struggle. This totally reframes what we think of as original sin. It's not some moral stain we inherit from our ancestors. It's a structural condition. It's just the default human setting. We're born identified with our ego, feeling disconnected from that deeper, unified core. It's not your fault, but it is your predicament. So if the fall is the diagnosis, what's the cure? Well, the rest of the Bible is basically the prescription. It's this epic story of the journey back home, back to the core. Let's see how it unfolds, starting with a little story you might have heard of called Exodus. And here again, the symbols just line up perfectly with our inner world. Egypt isn't a country. It's that state of being a slave to worldly things, to sensory pleasure, to the ego. And Pharaoh? He's the tyrannical ego itself, always pushing us to build bigger and bigger pyramids to its own glory. But then there's Moses. Moses is our higher intellect, that quiet inner guide that hears a call to freedom. And the promised land? You guessed it. That's the return to the core, that state of inner peace and deep fulfillment. So this all points to a two-part cure laid out in the Bible. First, you've got the law of Moses in the Old Testament. Think of it as an external fence. It helps you manage the chaos of the ego. It literally shows you the bars of your own prison. But that can only take you so far. Then, the New Testament introduces the grace of Christ. And this is an internal transformation, a path of surrender that actually dissolves the ego and reopens the door to the core from the inside. So beyond the big picture story, the Bible is also packed with specific tools, you could even call them spiritual technologies, for this inward journey of transformation. Let's take the parable of the sower. It's not really about farming, is it? It's a diagnostic tool for your own consciousness right now. Is your mind like the hard path, so cynical that no new ideas can get in? Or maybe it's the rocky ground. You get all excited about something new, but there's no real discipline to back it up.
Or the thorny ground, where you're just so choked up with worldly anxieties that nothing spiritual can grow? Or is it the good soil, prepared, open, and ready for wisdom to flourish? And get this, even something as familiar as the Lord's Prayer totally transforms. With this esoteric key, it stops being a list of requests. Instead, it becomes this incredible 7-step alchemical formula for rewiring your own consciousness. I mean, look at this. You're aligning with your core, you're surrendering the ego's will, you're dissolving karma through forgiveness. It's a complete psychoenergetic practice, a technology for transformation hidden in plain sight. All of this, every story, every law, every parable, it's all pointing to one ultimate revelation, the central message of the whole shebang. And here it is. When we use this key, the Bible stops being a dusty old book about the past. It becomes alive. It becomes a user's manual for your own mind, for your own soul, right here, right now. And it all comes down to this one breathtaking statement. The entire journey, the whole map, it all leads to one destination. Not a place up in the sky, not a time in the distant future, but a state of being that is accessible deep inside of you, in this very moment. The kingdom is already here. The only question is, will you read the map?